where does your fascination or your interest in Zeus comes from, Nicholas?
I mean, I was a born freaky myself. And for me, it was Portland, Maine, where I first really sort of tripped and fell into heavy metal. And for me, it was also sort of a bit of the punk, a bit of the sort of like early 2000s screamo. That sort of cringe era was more what I tripped and fell into. But so for me, on my first trip to Cuba over 10 years ago, now 2009, to sort of find and encounter this community of like-minded freakies and to like feel myself in a way at home in that community felt really special. But also the more I learned, the more I got to know, the more I encountered, the more there was to say about this community, and more that you sort of learn about what it means to be a freaky in Cuba and what people have had to overcome. It hooked me, and it still has me quite hooked.
It's interesting how Zeus became a national icon for a while, and then they were considered trash. So yeah, the culture fluctuates a lot. Can you explain a little about that?
Yeah, I think evolves and changes. I think what's interesting about Zeus is that they went and they've been a band for over 30 years. And I think their story in a lot of ways tracks along with the evolution of modern change in Cuba as well over the past 30 years. So where they were 30 years ago in the late 80s, early 90s, was on the outside of society. These were the freakies. They were shunned by the government, seen as accepting this sort of capitalist negative enemy music. So obviously, when you're a teenager, anything that's like against the official word, whether you're in the U.S. or down in Cuba, is to find something special and rebellious in that. And that was where the band was also when they were younger. Now they're in their 50s. They're part of a government, officially sanctioned government bureaucracy called the Agency of Rock, the Agencia Cubana de Rock. And so obviously there's a bit of evolution there. And I think for them, and what Dione, the lead singer, would say is that it's always about finding their audience and finding the community that they're making their music for. And basically, and also just continuing to do what they love, which is to rock.
So Nicholas, in a way, this film was a trip through your youth. I'm not saying you're old, but you're older than you were in the.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you saw any of those pictures of me from 2009. I was a little bit of a slightly different looking gentleman back then. And I think for me, I mean, when anyone that takes a long-term, this is 10 years in the making, I think in a lot of ways, I also grew up as a person, as a filmmaker, as an artist, alongside these guys. I mean, I was there right after their 20th anniversary, and I was 20 years old. I was there for their 25th anniversary, celebrating my 25th birthday. And then I was also there for my 30th birthday. We went down to Cuba as the band was celebrating their 30th anniversary. So in a way, my life also grew up as we were making the film and alongside the band.
Yeah, you evolved as a filmmaker, as a person through the film as well. You can tell because the film is evolving through the years and their lives, and I guess yours too. So you're part of you're not like an observer, you're there too in a way, maybe.
Well, whatever the the idea that to observe something is to change something. So what I observed in 2009 was different than what I observed in 2019 when we were finishing the film. And I think it's great to hear that comes across in the film, that you feel a sense of time, a sense of change as our subjects are changing, as world history is changing. When I first traveled to Cuba, we had George W. Bush was president. I was in Cuba as Barack Obama was being inaugurated. It was amazing to watch that process happen in a country that hadn't seen a change of power in 50 years.
And the whole thing with Obama opened.
Yeah, we were there for the opening. And then, of course, we were there as President Trump brought things back and sort of everything backslid back into the familiar antagonistic place that it had been.
Embargo and all that shit.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and how was, Cubans are the most welcoming people. I think I was in Cuba twice as well. So I guess you were embraced by them. They're the awesome people, as a people, as a nation.
Yeah, and the band very much opened the arms to me and the crew. And I think that the important thing is that I'm the director, but in the making of a film, it's a community. And I think particularly when you spend a long time on a project, it helps if you like the people you work with. And I very much have one of the things I'm most proud of the project is this was a project of Cubans and Americans working closely together in front of and behind the camera. You know, the cinematographer who shot most of the footage in the film that's any good was shot by this amazing Cuban cinematographer named Javier Labrador. The sound was done by a Cuban colleague that we worked closely and friend that we worked closely together. The music was done by a Cuban artist, musician named Dave Lombardo, who's the famed drummer for Slayer. So
lives in New York, I think.
He's in LA, actually. He's near you.
And how did you finance the film? Or you don't want to talk about money?
I mean, money, you can't, we're in a capitalist world. You can't escape, it's always there. No, I think the project had a number of different lives, and we did a crowdfunding in 2013 to really kick off the editing. A lot of it was bootstrapped, taking freelance work and then rolling it back into film. Some of it's investment, a lot of it's grants. For any filmmakers watching, obviously we all know that it's a hustle of cobbling together a community. Yeah, it's a community. It's a community not only making the film with cameras in our hands, but also getting community together that says, yes, this is an amazing project. This is an amazing band. Nick, keep going. And so that was a big part of financing too, is building a community around a project. So
do you think, heavy metal is a very specific type of music, but the fans are very, very faithful. Yeah. So heavy metal is not death, I don't think. It's not dead. No. And I think, I love that. It's a very fair criticism now amongst Cubans watching the film. They say, "Oye, what do you mean, los últimos friki de Cuba? Yo soy friki, yo soy en Cuba." Because of the title of the film it translates as the last freaks, sort of the last freakies in Cuba. And for me, it was more of a question than a statement. Like, it's a question that one of the guitarists makes in the film is like, will there be any freakies left for us to listen to us play? And I think for me, the title is really a question. Are the guys from Zeus the last freaks in Cuba, or will another generation of freakies come around? For me, I put it more as a question than a statement. I think there's another generation of freakies, right? Yeah, I think so. As world culture evolves, and I think electric guitar music and hard rock music, I think had a bit of a quiet period this past decade, you could say, and it's been very nice. You hear pop music today, and you hear it's like they found the electric guitar in the recording studio and finally plugged it in again. So it's been very nice to hear. They're very much rock and roll is coming back. Rock and roll is here to stay. That's really cool. That's a famous person once saying. So how do you see your future? What are you going to be doing? What are you working on? And we're super excited to be getting this film out. We're releasing the film on September 16th through Topic and through all the usual iTunes, Google, etc. You can find it on losultimosfrikis.com. And for me, I'm excited to be, for me, this is a big project to the big ending of one's phase of one's creative life, to be putting this film out and just sharing this work and this band with the world. So I joke with my friends that I'm very much looking for what my next decade will look like. What project will I sink my next decade into? So I love the fact that you introduce their lives throughout the evolution, and their family members, they have problems, they don't have problems, the family, I don't know, normally we have this myth that heavy metal performers or singers are totally different. They cannot love, they don't have kids, they're crazy. But it was very touching to see them, like, I don't know, drinking a coffee, playing with the kids. I think that ultimately speaks to the multiple layers that exist in any society, in anyone's life. You don't expect to see heavy metal in Cuba, and then when you see it, you don't expect to see family and friendship and humanity within heavy metal. So there's a bit
there's a lot to reveal, a lot to share, I think, in what these guys are screaming about.